Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about the wonderful book of the Tao Te Ching. Chapter 39 is one of my favorite because it's basically living the wholeness. Basically, it's one of the best chapter of this entire book. What does it mean about living wholeness? So let me explain. So this chapter 39 of the Tao Te Ching is, in my opinion, I'm going to elaborate, they are focusing more on the wholeness and humility. So it teaches you that everything around you in existence, from the heavens to the earth, basically derives its power and stability from a single source. It's called the oneness of the Tao. So there's a few things that you can think about this oneness. Basically, Lao Tzu explains that when things are in harmony with this oneness, they fulfill their natural purpose. So for example, the sky becomes clear, the earth becomes stable, the spirits gain power, the valley becomes full, all things flourished and live, and the leaders govern correctly. Alright, so when you see these kind of elements that I just mentioned, if they don't align, then it will collapse. Then the sky will cracks, the earth will crumbles, and the rulers, basically the governors, they will fall from the power, as you can see in some of those countries. So it's very important about these kind of elements. The second thing you need to think about is humility. Just as mentioned, is a foundation as well for this chapter 39. So the second half of this chapter is basically focusing on the noble is rooted in the humbly. So the high is based on the low. Let me explain. So you have like things like truly wise leaders in both corporate and also in your own house, the people that run the household. They are basically lonely, but they understood the high status of their self was entirely depending on the people below them, on, for example, the helpers in your own house, or the cleaners in the corporation, or the assistant manager, or even the reception, or the janitors. Everyone basically is helping you. So this is a very important part, because humility is very important, because without them, this whole corporation or the whole family doesn't exist. Okay? So you have like jade versus a stone. So jade is something like a diamond, something more precious, and a stone, someone will just say, yeah, nothing fancy about that. But Lao Tzu warns that against desiring of the glitter like jade, instead he encourages you to be as rocked and common as stone. So real value lies in being solid and useful, not in appearing rare or the elite, so-called. Alright? So how can we apply this chapter 39 in our modern day and age? There's a few liner. So a CEO, for example, when it comes to business, who acknowledge they are nothing without their frontline staff, applies in this chapter. So they focus on the foundation. So for example, the employee well-being rather than the roof, for example, their bonuses and their titles. And also we have heard a lot about ESG, that is the sustainability, right? So businesses that align with that whole environment prioritize long-term ecological health over short-term, the so-called the jade-like profits, right? So ensuring that they don't crack and dry out. So as you can see that some companies I don't like as well, that is talk about, you want a very good environment while they are doing pollution or any products or services that doesn't serve humanity. So they say something or they give charity to something, and then while they're doing something wrong. It has to be embedded in the business model. That is very important. How do I apply that in your job? You can do that as well. So recognize that, for example, a project's success is like a carrier. So doesn't exist without the lowly administrative people and the support systems or the support team, right? So value those people rather than seeking something like bonuses or like individual recognitions, those kind of stuff. And when you have that clarity of the mind, by attaining oneness, as I mentioned earlier, you focus deeply on one task at a time. You then avoid the fragmentation and unclear mind that leads to burnout or error. You can see a lot of people has this kind of stuff. And how to apply that in your personal life, even though you're not working, a housewife or a house husband. So you have the authentic presence. Instead of creating a jade-like, again, image of on social media, most of people post the good things on social media. Find peace in being an ordinary stone, quote unquote. So meaning that someone who is reliable. When you say something to a promise or anything to your kids or your wife or your husband, do it. Steadfast and also realistic, and tell the truth. Community roots, how do you do that? So remembering that your personal success is built on the support of your family, friends, and also strangers who pave the roads you drive on. So this perspective prevents the arrogance that Lao Tzu warns will lead to a fall. Nowadays we have seen the leaders that think they have done everything by themselves, and that's a very bad leader, because they think that that's called the ego again, the Ego, E-G-O. And that's very sad. And those people think that they can succeed without other people around them. And that's not true. You can only succeed because the people below you has supported you all the way up. Alright, let me read that from this book, what is written. It's quite a lot. I just read maybe very slowly or fast, depends on how you want. So, of old, these came to be in possession of the One. Heaven, in virtue of the One, is limpid. Earth, in virtue of the One, is settled. Gods, in virtue of the One, have their potencies. The valley, in virtue of the One, is full. The myriad creatures, in virtue of the One, are alive. Lords and princes, in virtue of the One, become leaders in the empire. It is the One that makes these what they are. Without what makes it limpid, heaven might split. Without what makes it settle, earth might sink. Without what gives them their potencies, gods might spend themselves. Without what makes it full, the valley might run dry. Without what keeps them alive, the myriad creatures might perish. Without what makes them leaders, lords, and princes might fall. Hence, the superior must have the inferior as root. The high must have the low as base. Thus, lords and princes refer to themselves as solidarity or desolate and helpless. So this is what's basically saying as taking the inferior as root. It is not. Hence, the highest renown is without renown. Not wishing to be one among many like jade, like I mentioned, nor to be aloof like stone. Thank you so much, and let's go to the next chapter. Bye.